Good evening and welcome to our webinar, Retiring in 12 Months. Tonight's webinar will run for about an hour. It's recorded and will be available on our website shortly. My name is Bree Jude, as much as my name tag may say, and I am First Super's marketing team. Let me begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and by paying my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. I also extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples attending this event. Firstly, thank you for joining us tonight. We are excited to be here. We encourage you to ask questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Questions are anonymous and we will do our very best to answer them all. Before handing over to our financial planning team, there are a couple of important housekeeping items that I need to cover. A bit about First Super. We are an industry fund with more than 70,000 members and $5 billion in funds under management. We have strong industry links, as you can imagine. We have a dedicated member services team and provide local personalized service. You can take us with you for life, from accumulation to your transition to retirement, and finally onto a retirement income account. Onto the disclaimers. It wouldn't be superannuation without disclaimers. The content in this presentation has been prepared by First Super and may not be used or reproduced without prior written consent. The information in this presentation is accurate as of today's date, Tuesday, 20th of May, 2025. First Super has engaged industry fund services to provide financial advice to our members. All of our financial planners are authorized representatives of IFS. Further information regarding the cost of advice is set out in our financial services guide. The information in this presentation tonight explains concepts, strategies, and ideas in a general way. If you feel it could be applicable to your personal situation, we recommend you obtain financial advice before taking any action. Now, let's meet the team. Joining us tonight is Andrew Jewell, our Executive Manager, Financial Advice and Education, and financial planners, Jason Bruce and Daniela Bautianu. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Andrew.
Thank you very much, Bree, and welcome everyone that's joined us here tonight. So we do appreciate you giving us your time. Tonight, as you may well be aware, the webinar is about retirement and how is it that people can use their superannuation to derive an income, and also is there the age pension? Is that going to play a role for some people as a source of income in their retirement years as well? We've had a number of questions submitted prior to the webinar, and we will answer those as we progress our way through. And as Bree mentioned before, if anyone would like to submit a question during the presentation, please feel free to do so and we will answer it where applicable. Otherwise, we will answer it in the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So let's start to get into it, shall we? What does retirement look like? And this is a big question for many of our members. And kind of two of the key questions they have that's very much on their minds is, do I have enough and how long is it going to last for? And this is in part what we're going to try and answer tonight, not individually by any means, but providing a general overall picture. So when we do talk to our members about retirement, one of the things that we start with is naturally as for retirement standards. And what I will do is actually hand over to Daniela. And Daniela, can you please just explain to us what is the retirement standards all about?
Sure, Andy. So just as you mentioned before, pretty much one of the main conversations that we do have with our members is a discussion about what they would like their retirement to look like. And thus, we obviously need to identify a budget that they would like to live off. Some have specific numbers in mind. Some are happy to maintain the same lifestyle that they had while they were working, but others haven't considered that. So this is when we start having a conversation around ASFA numbers, which is really a research. So they conducted and identify the lump sum amount required for couples, for singles to live either a comfortable lifestyle or a modest lifestyle. The name, the comfortable or a modest lifestyle might mean different things to different people, obviously. And just keeping in mind that this is just a benchmark of what they came up as. But overall, Modest retirement encapsulates people who are more budget conscious, obviously. They are living a more simple life. Their home is their world. So people are coming over to visit friends, family. Potentially, they do a bit of babysitting of their grandkids, a bit of gardening, fishing at some, local spots. They might have a caravan, just as shown in the picture, and they're content to, take some nearby trips here and there. So overseas trips is probably out of budget for them. So they're more locally based and closer to home. Um, they um, they might have some health insurance, but it doesn't have all the bells and whistles. It's just a basic standard level of cover. They don't need to have the latest gadgets. They're content with what they've got, so they don't need to keep buying things. So overall, they live a decent lifestyle without having a lot of, of the luxuries. Comfortable lifestyle, on the other hand, we consider it a bit more active lifestyle. So people go out more, they are more socially active. They travel further, and potentially some overseas trips might be on the cards. They are going and trying new restaurants, meeting their friends over there. They're enjoying additional activities such as maybe a golf game or tennis at a local club. They might look at spending some money on updating their car or allocating some funds to do some renovations around the house so they can afford these extra expenses. They are a bit more spontaneous, weekend getaways. So overall, these retirees can enjoy more things in life because they can afford a bit more.
So, I mean, often when we describe these kind of lifestyles, do members fit perfectly into one or the other?
No, so again, it's as I said, a comfortable lifestyle for somebody might mean a modest lifestyle for somebody else. So it's just a starting point for the conversation for us to have.
Yeah, and that's more the point. And then when we get into the next slide a little bit more, that starts to give an indication about how much income people may need if they want these different lifestyles. But the key point from this point onwards is first of all, just getting the member to think about what it is that they're wanting to do in their retirement lifestyles. So it gives us a position knowing how to kind of share with them some relevant information about how they're managing their super and the age pension and so forth. And then I guess on that note, let's move into the age pension itself. So Jason, can I, apologies, let's just move back to the income that we were going to require under the retirement standards. And Danielle, I'll go back to you. So if people are wanting that modest lifestyle, how much is it that they should be looking at in retirement?
Yeah, so as you can see in this little table, so based on ESFA calculation, for a single to live a modest lifestyle, that person would need a fortnightly income of 1,265, which gives us about $32,897 per year. And if the assumption is that that particular person gets a full age pension, as you can see, the age pension is close to $30,000 for a single person. That already shows that a modest lifestyle is very close to what age pension would give that particular person. So that individual would only need a little top up to bring him to that lifestyle. For a couple, the modest lifestyle is expected to spend about $47,500 per year, while the age pension is $45,000. So again, it's very close to what they would potentially already be receiving from the government. And for a comfortable lifestyle, a single person would need an income of close to $2,000 a fortnight, which gives us a 51,800 per year. So already we can see that if that particular person gets a full age pension and it wants to live a comfortable lifestyle, we already need to source somewhere close to $32,000 in assets to give that particular person that budget that is required. And for a couple, as per the ESFA calculations, they would need just over 2,800 a fortnight or $73,000 per year to live a comfortable lifestyle. And again, that just shows us that we need to source about $30,000 from somewhere else on top of the age pension that they would potentially be eligible for.
Okay. So again, I mean, the numbers that we're showing there are averages. From your own experience, have you seen that people have often gone towards these numbers when you're talking to them about how much income they need in retirement?
From experience, actually, a lot of our members, they are positioned somewhere in the middle. So you'd potentially be looking at about 65 to 70,000 per year that they want as a couple. And that's based usually on the fact that a lot of the couples, just one member has been working, so or has a healthy income comparing to the other partner. So they usually are happy to maintain the same lifestyle that they have been having during the working days. Obviously, the after-tax income, and it's very similar to, yeah, about 65 to 70, I'd say.
Okay, and that's for that comfortable lifestyle that they're seeking in that respect. And I think that's kind of the point here is that when we're talking to our members and we're talking about this possible income that they're going to need in retirement, these are just averages. And what they're really doing is they're acting as bookmarks. And they're saying that if someone's retiring, potentially you're going to need between 47,000 and 73,000. But to your very point, Daniela, it's actually people working out their own budget and working out their own living expenses and determining how much they actually do need. At the top of the screen, though, it's showing that for a couple, for them to enjoy this comfortable lifestyle, they're going to need about 690,000. Why is it so much?
Um, well, as we said, it's just an average, these calculations. And obviously we can't, guarantee a particular level of return for the rest of their lives and whatnot. The assumption might also be that they might not be eligible for the full age pension. So there's a lot of little bits and pieces that might be take into consideration to
Okay.
say that ideally you'd want that much in your
Much.
superannuation savings.
But if someone's wanting that comfortable lifestyle and they're maybe needing around about 73,000 per annum, it's at the top of the screen. It's saying that they need about $690,000 in super.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, where does that number really come from? Why is it that they're needing so much financial assets behind them if they want this comfortable lifestyle?
Well, that's how much you ideally would need to source you that $35,000 that we've identified earlier to top
Yeah.
you up on top of your age pension.
Yeah. And then that's probably more the key point is that when someone's wanting such a large amount of income in their retirement, the age pension is only going to play a certain role in that regard, and they're going to have to significantly top that age pension for what they're eligible for to derive that type of income. And of course, the more assets that they have, in actual fact, the age pension is reduced in proportionately. So what it really means is that if people are looking for this comfortable lifestyle and they're looking for this income of up to $73,000, 73,000 per annum, they're going to need to basically self-fund themselves for a period of time, or they're going to require a substantial amount of their own financial assets to drive the income because the age pension is going to be playing a much smaller role. Whereas down on the other end of the scale, the modest income, how much is it that ASPA has basically suggested that people may need in superannuation or their total financial assets to support this kind of lifestyle?
Sorry, I don't have this on my screen.
Okay, that's all right. So ASPA has actually said that you need about $100,000 to derive a modest lifestyle. And why is that? That's quite different from 690, and it goes back to the age pension. So if you've got around about $100,000 in superannuation, the likelihood is you're going to get the full age pension. So you're going to get about 45,000 for a couple. So therefore, you just need to top it up by about $2,000 each year. So that's where the $100,000 comes from. Whereas again, we go back to the earlier point, if you want this comfortable lifestyle and you want a much higher level of income, you're going to have to build up your superannuation quite substantially because that's going to become your main source of income, with the age pension playing a much lower role in that regards. Over time, as you spend more of your super and your own financial assets, yes, the age pension will increase, and it's potentially at some point in time, you may well get to the maximum amount. But it comes back to that and that's where we go back to the earlier slide. And that is, first of all, our members need to be thinking about what is that I want to do in my retirement years? What kind of lifestyle is it that I want? Then it's about doing a budget, and then it starts to paint a picture about how much income they're going to need in those retirement years. And as we suggest, it's going to be around about between 47 and 73,000 per annum. And then we can start to help them work out, well, is the age pension going to play a role right from the days that you retire, or is it going to play a role later on down the track in those regards? So with us talking about the age pension, let's move on to that. And to Jason, can you explain to us how is it that the age pension actually works? And if we start off with that for a couple.
Sure. First things first, I guess with the age pension, you have to reach the qualifying age to get there before you do the application. So at the moment and going forward, it will be 67 for everyone. So you have to turn 67 before you can apply for the age pension. And normally we would say to apply around about 13 weeks or 3 months before your 67th birthday, because that's how long Centrelink can take to assess your claim. So once you get to that qualifying age, there's basically 2 tests that Centrelink will look at. Okay, so they'll look at what's called an asset test and an income test. It's what we call means testing. They'll work out a payment based on both of these assets and incomes test. And as generous as they are, they'll give you whatever produces the lower payment. Okay, so to isolate them first and looking at the asset test for a couple. And these figures are assuming that we're homeowners. So the first thing to note that your home is an exempt asset. It's not counted towards this asset test, so long as you're on less than 5 acres. Okay, so we first look at what we call your financial assets. So that's going to be your superannuation, so long as you're over pension age, what you might have in the bank, what shares you might have, any other investments, managed funds or managed investment properties. Then we'll look at your non-financial assets. So they're your things that aren't readily available to be used as cash. So your cars, your typical ones, your contents, so your home contents. Now, for those values, we will use fire sales. So we don't necessarily look at the insured value of your contents of 100,000. We'll typically look at something closer to $5,000 or $10,000, which is what Centrelink will accept. Anything else, boats, paintings, caravans, if you've got some significant jewelry as well, they will look at everything like that. So it's pretty much everything that you own outside of your house. So to get the full age pension for a couple, which Daniela mentioned in the previous slide, those assets have to be less than 470,000 to get the full amount. Now, if you creep over that amount, Centrelink aren't too harsh on you. They just work it on a sliding scale where they reduce what your payment will be. If you're fortunate enough to be over the maximum threshold, which is, you can see there just over $1 million, that's where Centrelink will cut you off and say that you're not eligible for any payment at that time. Now, as your situation changes, it's good to update Centrelink every 6 months or so, because you may be over the threshold, you may be over the minimum threshold or even over the maximum threshold. But as you're living, as your assets are decreasing and you're living off your super, presumably your assets will decrease and you may be eligible for a payment as well. So you're not locked into whatever that initial payment is at 67. So Centrelink will first assess this and they'll look at that and say, yep, here's your payment under the asset test. Then we move on to the income test. The income test is particularly important for a couple if one member is working, or certainly if both members of the couple are working, if one of the members younger, because they do count your wage. So if you're a couple, you might have someone that's 67 and applying, and potentially a younger spouse that's maybe 62 or 63 that's still working. They will count that younger spouse's income. So you can see it does reduce very quickly. The minimum amount to get that full age pension is just under $10,000. So if one member of the couple is working, it does impinge in that fairly quickly. The maximum amount is just around 100,000. So it does have quite a varying range. Like I said, the wages is probably your primary source there of income. If you do have an investment property, any rental income is counted. For the financial assets, it's a little bit more tricky. So for your super funds, for any shares or any bank account, or any money in the bank that you've got, Centrelink don't worry about what return that actually generates or what you're drawing from your super. They basically throw a blanket over all those financial assets and what they call deem a rate of return. And that will basically at the highest point, it's 2.25%. So it's a fairly low return there, but they'll calculate both of them out, derive a level of income and assets, do your calculation and come back to you and determine your eligibility and how much of a payment you might get.
Okay. And just for single members, how does it differ, just quickly?
So it just works the same. The thresholds are less because it's presumed that it's one member, so they haven't built up as much assets, and they may not be eligible to gain as much income there as well. So same test, everything is basically the same. It's just that the thresholds are lower, and obviously the pension is the payment is a little bit different on a fortnightly basis as well.
Okay. So, I mean, while we're talking about the age pension for a single person, one question that did come in was this, if I keep working until I'm 70, how much can I have super and savings and still get the full age pension? So again, we're making the assumption that this member is single. So how would that apply in this situation?
Yeah, so obviously your super is going to count as an asset, but normally when we're working, the income test is probably the main worry because you can see there 65,000. So if you're working full time, most Australians will be right around that threshold, if not over. The good thing around still working, Centrelink or the government does want you to work a little bit. So there's a thing called the work bonus, okay? And what they basically do, the first $300 of fortnightly income from your work, specifically from your work, is not assessed under this income test, okay? And it does bank up over time as well. So if you're doing a little bit of part-time or casual work, and you're sort of transitioning to retirement at 70, you may still be eligible, and you can still certainly apply and see if you can get some sort of payment, which will help and get you a concession card that everyone raves about and wants as well.
Okay. And I guess on that same subject that we're talking about income, so another member asked, what's the effect if my wife continues to work for another 3 or 4 years, but I decide to retire? So if we go back to the couples screen, how does that relate to what we're seeing here?
Yeah, so unfortunately, they will count your wife's income under the income test. And if she's under 67, she doesn't get that work bonus as well. So it's only for the member that is over 67. Now, the good thing will be if your wife is under age 67, any money that she holds in super isn't counted towards the asset test until she does reach age 67, so long as she's not accessing it. So sort of doesn't work on one hand, the income test counting, but it does sort of help you on the other hand in the asset test if her super doesn't count.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so far we've kind of like discussed about the starting point is thinking about what the member wants to do in retirement, then give some consideration around about how much income it is that I need to meet my living expenses and how I want to enjoy my retirement years. And then consequently, we've just gone through a little bit about, okay, is the age pension going to play a role? If you're of pension age, and to your point, Jason, you've got to be 67 in which to become eligible for that. So if we then turn back to superannuation, and Daniel, if I can get you to explain, how is it that a member can then start to use their superannuation to derive a regular income that provides the sole income or in conjunction with the age pension, if it's applicable?
Yeah, sure. So while you're working, your superannuation account is pretty much in an accumulation phase. So this is when it grows through contributions from your employer, salary sacrificing, investment earnings, or any other contributions that you do over the years. So when it's time to retire, a lot of people think that kind of that's the end of the road, so the only option out is to just take the whole superannuation out, which is not the case. So there is a product that is called a retirement income account. And once you're retired or over the age of 60, it kind of opens the door to this product. So you could potentially look at moving majority of the funds, if not the whole superannuation, into this account, from where you can start drawing an income. So assuming you are not 67 yet and still retired, it means that until you reach 67, you pretty much will have to be self-funded. So all the budget that you want to leave off needs to come from pretty much your superannuation until you reach that age 67, where the age pension might kick in. This particular product, retirement income account, is very flexible. We can adjust how often you receive the pension, so it can start anything from fortnightly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. We can set up and adjust the amount that you draw. The only, I guess, legislation or limitation around this product is there is a minimum and a maximum that you have to draw out of. The minimum is a percentage based, but it's also linked to the age. So the older you grow, the bigger this minimum percentage will become. Once you turn 65, there is no maximum, or if you retire earlier than that, completely retire from the workforce, there is no maximum. So you could potentially, I don't know, if you have some sort of a debt and you want an additional, let's say $50,000, you can always do as a one-off additional withdrawal from this product. Another big point to kind of note is that the investment earnings inside this particular product, if you are retired and over the age of 60, they are tax-free. So if you, for the argument's sake, would have withdrawn your whole superannuation and invested in a term deposit in the bank, those investment earnings, they would be added to your personal income tax, and they would be taxed at some stage. Inside this retirement income account, there are no additional tax. So you could be invested the same way as your superannuation used to be invested if you wish to, or you can have a further discussion with us to identify what kind of investment you want to go forward with. But yeah, the big important point is there are no taxation around the investment earnings. So pretty much whatever income is drawn out of these products over the age of 60 is tax-free, and it literally goes into your bank account. So it's much easier to calculate the budget around it. And when you turn 67, and assuming that you are eligible for part age pension or full age pension, we can always adjust that further withdrawal depending on, again, what budget you want to leave off going forward.
Okay, great. So one of the questions that did actually come up is that can someone maintain both types of accounts? So can they keep some of their funds in the super account, and can they open up a retirement income account as well with the balance of the funds? Yeah,
definitely. So there is no, I guess, rules around how much you need to transfer into this retirement income account. The superannuation account would potentially be a good idea to keep open in case you do decide to go back to work or do a part-time work. But overall, I guess the main benefit of rolling everything into one account once you retire is just saving on administration fees. But it doesn't stop you from just keeping two separate accounts and have a little bit here and a little bit there as well.
Yeah. And there's sometimes where we do actually recommend that members keep some money in their superannuation account, and it comes back to the minimum that you referred to as well. If they move their entire balance over, then the minimum they've got to draw down against their account could be in excess of what they actually do need to meet their living expenses. So consequently, some members do leave money in the super account and roll over the balance, and therefore they're just drawing down what they need to meet their living expenses. And as you mentioned before, it's quite flexible. You can increase those drawings if you're needing to. Your living expenses have gone up. And as you mentioned, and one of the questions that came in before as well, the payments that you draw down against your retirement income account can be done as frequently as fortnightly. And it's not that uncommon for them to occur on a monthly basis as well. And there's different frequencies and so forth. But the main point that you highlighted is that what you actually draw down against your retirement income account is tax-free. It's non-assessable income. And the earnings on that account are tax-free. So you can be in exactly the same investment option underneath the retirement income account as you are underneath the super account. But the retirement income account potentially could earn a higher rate of return simply because those earnings are not taxed on that. Can you actually share with us, with a member, where you assisted a member with some advice about maybe commencing one of these retirement income accounts in conjunction with the age pension?
Yeah, sure. So I just recently saw a member, a single guy, age 65, and he just decided he had enough of his work, so he wants to retire at age 65. So I did explain, because of the legislation and because the age pension age would kick in at age 67, it would mean that for 2 years he would have to be pretty much self-funded and draw the required amount from his superannuation. So he wanted to maintain the same type of lifestyle, and we've calculated that the income that he wanted to draw down was $52,000 a year. So pretty much what it meant is we've transferred all his super into a retirement income account because he is now retired. So investment earnings would be looking better off because he wouldn't pay that 15% tax. And we would be saving on the cost of administration fees by having one account. So for the first 2 years, the idea is to draw that $52,000 a year paid fortnightly to him. And because of his assets, he will be eligible to a full age pension when he turns 67. And based on the previous slides, we saw that a single person, to get a full age pension, you'd be looking at about $30,000 a year. So to maintain that 52,000 that he wanted as living expenses, we will have to adjust his retirement income account payments by that $30,000. So just top him up with $22,000 that he requires to bring him to $52,000, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's got to originally, because he hasn't reached age pension age, he's got to draw down against his super, the 52,000 he needs a year. But once he got to the age pension age, the age pension kicks in for him, and he's just got to top up that age pension, so he reduces his drawings consequently in that regards. So that's a great story. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. But I mean, I guess, for some members, they're potentially still sitting there going, okay, I've got a feel now for potentially what I got to do. But one of my burning questions is do I still have enough? How long is it going to last for in my retirement years? So Jason, I'm going to get you to explain what we call a retirement health check. And if we can just do an overview and then we move into a bit of a case study on it.
Yeah, sure. So retirement health check is it's a great offering that we do, especially with people looking to step into financial advice or retirement for the first time. It takes us about half an hour. There's no additional fee for members as well. And it basically gives us a bit of a projection out to show us whether you'll have enough to retire and how long that money's going to last. Because I mean, the tricky thing with a lot of it, and even with the ASFA guidelines and everything like that, it's pretty specific to say we're assuming you're retiring on age pension age. It doesn't account for any capital expenses. So do you want a big trip on top of the comfortable lifestyle, daughter and son's wedding that you want to account for, whatever it might be. So we're able to put in all these inputs that are specific to you rather than generally to throw it across. Yeah, we'll go through a case study now, which will sort of tease that out, and how we can help. So we've got here Barry and Debbie, who are both 59. So they're starting to think about retirement. It's starting to get a little bit closer. Barry's worked full time for around about 40 years. So he's got a nice super balance there. Debbie's been working just part-time for the last 7 years as well. So consequently, her super's a little bit smaller. They've had 4 kids, so good on them, but they're all grown up and they're empty nesters now. They've worked really well. They've paid off their family home. They are considering downsizing their house as well and moving into something smaller. We can see there, like I said, Barry's built up his super, working full time. He's got about 250,000. Debbie's got about 25. Barry's salary is 50,000 per annum, and Debbie's part-time salary is 25. So they've come to us and said, look, we want to retire in the next 5 years. We're worried whether we're going to have enough. And based on sort of what we're earning at the moment, we'd like to sort of maintain a similar level of income for 52,000. Okay, so what we do is we tease that out with Barry and Debbie, put in all their details, and we get a lovely graph here. So you can see basically what we're looking at. I know it's a lot of different shades of blue, but we've got them working for basically another 6 years. So we've got this first, I guess, column of blue here, which is showing their salary income. Okay, and that's meeting the sort of orange line on the graph is their living expenses. So a bit higher living expenses now. They're paying tax while they're working, but they're meeting that all through their wages over the next 6 years. And we can see in the background, there's sort of like a pool of water, and that's going up because that's their super continuing to increase as they're getting their super contributions and as they're continuing to get investment earnings. Then you see the green columns kick in, and that's basically we're retiring and we're living off our super. So our super is the green. Because they're retiring at 65, they've got 2 years where they're self-funded because they're not of pension age yet. Okay, so their assets are taking a bit of a hit there because they're using just their super accounts. And then at age 67, the age pension kicks in, and you can see that starts to provide most of their income. So sort of what Daniela and Andy were talking about with their super only doing a little bit of the heavy lifting, was doing a lot of heavy lifting for a couple of years. Now the age pension is doing that heavy lifting for us. Our super is all of a sudden only drawing a small amount out. And we can see here, even where that orange line, you can see that the green sort of is going above it. And what that means is the income is higher than the 52,000. Why? Because they've got to draw out that minimum percentage. So that's giving them more than they need. So this would probably, going through a scenario like this would sort of show Barry and Debbie, look, you've got enough. There's more income. So that gives you a little bit more flexibility if you want to do a bit of extra travel or some more things as you age into retirement. And you're still, towards the end of your graph in your mid-90s, got a fair bit of money left. So that gives you a bit of flexibility and some options to think, I've got a bit more of a buffer in case there's, aged care or other issues, or if we want to do something else, or even if we get to 3 or 4 years and we want to retire a little bit sooner, maybe that's something that's feasible as well. So it just gives the members a good sort of guide where they're at. And, if they're on track, all great. And if they're not, well, what are some things that we can do to make our situation better?
All right, thank you very much. And this retirement health check ties into a couple of other questions that were asked before, and that is, if I'm 62 and single, can I retire? Can I retire before age 67? All those questions are possibly yes. It just really depends upon what kind of income do you need to enjoy your retirement? And to your point before, Jason, what capital expenses are you wanting to do? Go on a big trip, whatever the ASIC case may be. So it becomes a question of, well, how much super have you got now? And if you do retire today, for example, how long is that going to last for? That all comes back down to how much do you want to draw as an income around there. And this is what that projection just outlays a little bit. And and as the chart shows, even in this case study, the couple retired at 65, they're not eligible for the age pension of 67. So even if someone's retiring in their early 60s, they're self-funding really for a period of time until they get to the age pension age, and that income starts to kick in. So, as we saw before on the comfortable lifestyle, it was suggesting that you need about 690,000 if you want that level of 73,000 per annum every year for the rest of your life expectancy. But again, that's making the assumption you're at age 67. If you want to retire before age 67, and derive that type of income, you're going to need a lot more than 690,000 because you're going to have to self-fund for a period of time as well. So again, for a number of our members, they might be going, okay, I've got a good picture now about potentially what it is that my superannuation's got to build up to, but I just may not feel like I've got enough in there, or I want to make sure I've got more than ample in my superannuation. So how do I actually increase that? And that's where we come back to some contribution strategies around that. So Danielle, if you can just run through what are the two really types of contributions members can make to super, and what's the advantage of one over the other?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, pretty much there are two types of contribution before tax, or otherwise called concessional contribution, and they include your employer contribution, which at the moment are 11.5% and will go up to 12% of your income. There are the salary sacrificing, any additional tax deductible contribution that you could potentially put in yourself and then claim a tax deduction against those contributions. Now, keep in mind that there is a cap for this concessional before tax contribution, and that's $30,000 per financial year. There is a carry forward rule, though, that could potentially allow us to put more than this $30,000. And what that means is since 2018, you can bring forward 5 years of previous unutilized contributions forward. So if you check your MyGov, you'll find that amount. Potentially, it might be, I don't know, $90,000 sitting there of unutilized cap. So that means that in following years, you could put above that $30,000 cap and still not breach any rules or any caps. So before tax, as it says, tax deductible contribution. So if your income is a healthy one, and the higher your income, the more kind of tax deductible and tax beneficial strategies there are that you could potentially utilize. So for example, if you earn an income of $100,000 and then you do an additional deductible contribution of $20,000, all of a sudden your taxable income drops from $100,000 to $80,000 because you've claimed a tax deduction against your income. Then on the other hand, there are the after-tax contributions. So these are money sitting in your bank account. You've already paid tax, and you can contribute into your superannuation to grow your retirement savings faster. There is also a cap with those. It's $120,000 per year. There is, though, again, a rule where you can bring 3 years of contributions if you're under age of 75. So in one go, you could potentially put $360,000. These after-tax contribution also include the government co-contribution. Government co-contributions are pretty much additional contributions that the government match your personal after-tax contribution, but you do need to earn a particular level of income to qualify for these contributions. The biggest difference between the before tax and after tax contributions is the way the money are treated when they reach superannuation. So the before tax contribution will be taxed at 15% when they reach superannuation. So for argument's sake, if you do deposit or salary sacrifice $1,000, $150 will be deducted and paid to the government as a tax. So you'll only see $850 reaching your superannuation. So yes, it's good that it minimizes the tax that you are paying, and potentially you can benefit from a tax refund, but it doesn't grow your superannuation as fast as those after-tax contributions, which are not taxed again when they reach the superannuation account. With all these legislation changes and numbers and caps changes, just good to know that for the following year there are no cap changes. The only difference that had been introduced in the new financial year are those salary range had been kind of maximized a little bit more, so it's more beneficial in order to be eligible for the government co-contribution.
Alrighty. So, yep, great explanation. So there's really just two types of contributions that come in. There's the before tax, and that certainly are applicable if you're on a higher salary and while you are still working. They can also be used for when people do leave their employer and they receive a significant lump sum of annual leave, of accrued annual leave or long service leave. You can use this type of contribution to offset some of the income tax that you've incurred. Or consequently, there's the non-concessional or after-tax contribution, where you can put in much larger amounts, and they are available whether you're working or not. How you use them, if you're going to use them during your working life. It could be that, yes, like I say, you come into some significant monies, like an inheritance or something of that nature, or sold a share portfolio or investment property, and you want to contribute those proceeds into the superannuation fund. Or if you're on a lower type of income, then there's the government co-contribution. So they've been the most common types of contributions for a number of years now, but there's also now a third one. If we can just do a quick overview of the downsizer contribution, Daniela.
That's the situation where if you do decide to sell your house and potentially buy a smaller or cheaper one, and you do have this residual amount that you could look at contributing into superannuation. So again, there are some rules that you have to satisfy. So you have to be 55 years or over. You have to own the house for more than 10 years before the sale. And you literally can contribute $300,000 each, or if you're a couple, up to 600,000 into each individual superannuation, and that's on top of those previous caps that I've mentioned. So on top of the 360,000 in one go of non-concessional contributions.
All righty. So, but Jason, if we go back to the age pension, what is it that the members got to be wary about if they're using this downsizer contribution?
Yeah, so
Sorry.
that's all right. So your home is exempt, as I said, if it's on less than 5 acres. So if you do free up some proceeds and do decide to downsize, all of a sudden there could be some extra money that is no longer exempt. I did have a situation where I had a 77-year-old couple who did downsize, and it was more of a lifestyle choice for them. They freed up around about 400,000 in proceeds. And because they were 77, they wouldn't have otherwise been able to contribute into super, but they were able to do a downsizer contribution. They'd basically almost run out of super beforehand, so they were able to dump. They just want to do 300,000 into super. So it was great that they now had boosted their super up. So it was good they could start to draw on that, but it did cut their age pension a little bit. They were still able to get a fairly healthy age pension, which was good. But the husband was a little bit grumpy that it did cut his entitlement a bit. So we just have to be aware of that, and we have to update Centrelink accordingly.
Accordingly, yeah. So, I mean, the downsizer contribution is a great option if people want to inject some money in. I think they got to be wary about whether the money goes into super or sits in the bank account. The net proceeds from the sale of the house is going to impact their eligibility for the age pension. But just quickly, also, can you just share with us the member story that you had about where you actually gave some advice around using the downsizer contribution, but actually were able to maximize their age pension?
Yeah, yes, I did have another one where it was a couple. They were both retiring. The member was 67. His wife was in her early 60s, and they were both retiring. They did have a nice big 4-bedroom family home. Kids were out. They didn't need that big house anymore, and they still did have a debt of a couple $100,000 on that as well. So they did downsize into a retirement village. Were able to pay off their debt and still had $100,000 in leftover proceeds. So we're talking about what to do with that money if we had have left it in the bank, or if we had have put it in the 67-year-old super fund, would have reduced their age pension because there's an extra $100,000 in there. What we did was we put it in the younger spouse's superannuation. They were right at that threshold of around about 450. So by putting it in her superannuation, it wasn't counted as an asset and won't be for the next about 4 or 5 years. which means that during that period of time, the 67-year-old member was able to get the full age pension entitlement for himself.
All right, great. And Daniela, apologies. Can you give an example of where you used some advice to a member using the before and after tax contribution strategies?
Yeah, well, I guess just to keep it simple and short, I did have a member that received $200,000 inheritance, and for his particular situation, we just did an after-tax contribution into his superannuation. So we did reach that first year cap of 120,000, which activated that bring forward 3 years contribution cap. Which means that for the following 3 years, he still can contribute more funds, but it would be limited to the difference between 360,000 and the $200,000 that he put in. So in doing that, he then moved the funds into a pension account where the investment earnings were tax-free, and overall put him in a better position that way, rather than just keeping it in his bank account, I guess. And another example of a member that I've advised around the concessional tax deductible contribution. He was in his last year of working, retiring pretty much July next year. He earned for this financial year $90,000. So we actually, because he was over the age of 60, we were able to utilize some of his superannuation. So we withdrew 10% of his balance and contributed it back into his super in the amount of $40,000. And in that way, we've reduced his taxable income from $90,000 down to $50,000. So when he's going to do his tax return in the new financial year, the accountant will adjust those amounts and he will be eligible for close to $12,000 of tax refunds.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. All right, so we've covered off quite a bit tonight. And we did get some questions in, so I'm just going to pose those back to you. So I guess, Daniela, with yourself and talking about the retirement income account, one of the questions is what is the minimum and the maximum percentage?
So again, the minimum will depend on the age. Assuming you are between 60 to 64, it's 4% minimum and maximum of 10% if you are still working. However, if you are retired, then that maximum disappears. So you only have to draw that minimum of 4%. If you're above age 65 to 75, the minimum percentage increases to 5%, and then it continues increasing ever so slightly as you grow older.
All right, thank you very much. And Jason, one of the questions was, can you please explain how age pension versus own super is mean tested? I think you've done that before in that regards. But the second part of the question was, does it matter how long you've been living in Australia to receive it? I guess they mean the age pension.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so there is residency requirements that you do have to meet to be eligible for the age pension. So generally, there's a period of 10 years. There's some criteria around consecutive years that you've been here as well. There are some exemptions that do apply too, depending on sort of where you've come from and some other factors as well. So I suggest if you have been here for a short period of time, definitely speak to Centrelink about your eligibility, because it is a little bit case to case, but generally that 10-year residency rule is what we look at.
Okay. And Daniela, what's the youngest age you can retire? You can part retire.
Well, I guess it goes back to when you can dip into your superannuation, and that's age 60. So if you have enough funds and you believe they're going to last you your life expectancy and you're happy to self-fund yourself for those first 7 years, you can start doing it at age 60.
All right, thank you. And Jason, one of the last questions for tonight, and there's a couple of more we'll go through in a moment, but is there a maximum amount you can transfer to the retirement account?
Yes, so there is a maximum amount. It's what we call the transfer balance cap. And it's basically the amount that you can transfer from your super accumulation phase into a pension phase. Coming forward to this next financial year, that's indexed up to $2 million. So you have to have quite a bit of funds to reach that mark, and congratulations if you are there.
Yeah. And in part, that comes back to the earlier question before, can I have a super account and a pension account? Yes, if you've got, in to your example, more than $2 million in superannuation funds, but the maximum you can put in to the pension account, the retirement income account, is 2 million. The rest of it's got to remain in the superannuation account if you want to keep it in the superannuation environment. Just a couple of more questions just before we finish up. Danielle, back to contributions. A question came in about if you're off, what I think it's about, if you've got the age pension, can you still contribute to your super?
So assuming you're receiving age pension because you're now fully retired, then it's pointless to do tax deductible contributions because you can't claim tax against something that you don't pay tax on. So potentially the non-concessional contributions or the downsizer contributions would be an option for you as long as you are under the age of 75.
All right, thank you very much. And Jason, we've got a couple of questions in about the UK pension. People were just asking about, is it taxed in Australia? What should I consider if I've got a UK pension as well?
Yeah, so you've obviously got to consider there are tax implications that you'd have to consider, and definitely speak to an accountant around that. And also the income test is very important as well. If you've got income from a foreign source, wherever it's from, really, we would obviously need to talk to Centrelink about how that's assessed and whether it might impact your eligibility for the age pension as well.
All right, thank you very much. And just to round off a couple of other questions that we've got, and I'll answer these. We've got a couple of questions about investment choice. Yes, there's different investment options underneath your superannuation, and the same investment options are available underneath the retirement income accounts. And people are talking about, how do I maximize my returns on my investments? Well, there's certain investment options there that can generate higher returns, but they also carry higher risk. And if you're in one of those options, you will certainly have seen your superannuation balance bounce around in the last couple of months with Trump and his Independence Day and the tariffs that he's basically tried to introduce or has introduced around there. So we do offer a service where we were happy to sit down and do what we call a risk profile questionnaire with you, and we go through and we ascertain and then recommend what investment option best suits you in what you're trying to achieve before or as you step into retirement. The other question that came in is it worthwhile selling up a small share portfolio and putting it into super before we retire? Well, you've got to give consideration to capital gains tax that you're going to pay off on that small share portfolio. And while you're still working, to Daniela's point, you might be able to make a personal tax deductible contribution and offset some of that capital gains tax. So again, we got some advice that we can certainly share with you in respect to that. And how can my super help me cut back on my work? That's actually in our next webinar in the next couple of months about how to boost your superannuation or use what we call the transition to retirement strategy to derive an income while you cut back on your working hours. So if you're really interested in that type of approach, then we do recommend you attend our next webinar. So we've covered off a lot tonight. So this webinar will be made available from tomorrow. But in essence, what we've done is ask members to start thinking about, if you talk, when you're considering retiring, think about what it is you want to do in your retirement years. Then do a budget, determine how much income you're going to need. You're then going to be able to work out, is the age pension going to play a part? Is it going to be my main source of income, or is it going to be a small part of my income? And what role is my superannuation going to play as well? We do offer the retirement health check to help you determine whether you've got enough superannuation and is it going to last your retirement years as well. It doesn't cost you an additional fee. It's part of your membership cost, and it takes about 30 minutes in which to work your way through that. If you feel like you don't have enough super and you want to build it up more, or it becomes evident that you do need to build up your super a little bit more before you do retire, then there's those contribution options that are available to you. And again, we can assist you in determining what is the best approach for you to try and build up your super before you do retire in those regards. So you will receive a survey following this webinar, thanking you for your attendance, and please give us some feedback, the good and the bad. We're always happy to improve the webinars that we do, but also there'd be an option if you want to reach out to the financial advice team and obtain some advice around your particular circumstances and your retirement plans. The thing to just be wary of is that we're coming towards the end of the financial year, so the financial advice team is actually booked out, but we will make contact with you, but the initial appointment probably won't take place until the new financial year in that respect. But again, thank you very much for attending tonight. We hope we've given you plenty of information to think about. And please reach out to us if you're wanting some more information. There is our website that contains a lot of this information, short videos, first talk that are available, and go back over all these topics. But if you want to talk to someone, there's our contact center. There's our local coordinators that can give you general advice. But if you want personal advice about what you should do, then yes, please reach out to the financial advice team. Again, thank you very much for your attendance, and all take care.